So Donald Trump is facing a host of new legal problems, some of his own making, including a new lawsuit in New York where it says that his business dealings are tantamount to the art of the steal, not the art of the deal. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So this week we got big legal news on Donald Trump on two fronts. The first involves the special master that he basically threw a temper tantrum in front of a partisan judge that he shopped around to get in front of so that he could get this individual appointed. Well, as it turns out, once he got to the special master, a special master, by the way, that he suggested, suddenly the special master is asking the obvious question, which is, well, if you have classified documents in your possession, did you somehow declassify them? And if so, where's the evidence of that? Well, Donald Trump's lawyers responded, not surprisingly, that, they can't provide that information, claiming that part of the reason they can't provide that information is because they need to keep that information secret to protect themselves in case they have to fight off a potential indictment. Well, the special master was having none of that. He said, and I quote, "You can't have your cake and eat it too." It turns out that this special master was actually a federal judge who had served on the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. And he's not buying the BS that Donald Trump and his attorneys are spewing. He actually cares about the idea that America's secrets should be protected and says, okay, if these documents were declassified, let's see the evidence of it. Something that Donald Trump obviously can't provide. Now, this pattern is typical because, of course, Donald Trump loves to go to court and make all kinds of outlandish claims in the media. But the problem you run into is when these outlandish claims meet the court situation. Courts aren't a place where you can lie or exaggerate things. You have to back up your words with evidence. And if you don't, you can face substantial fines and penalties, the kind that have been imposed upon some of the attorneys who filed some of the 61 lawsuits, all of which were dismissed by courts, claiming that there was some type of fraud in the 2020 election. Well, in this case, they're before a judge who's not taking any nonsense. And despite the fact that Donald Trump's attorney suggested him as a possible special master, he's not bending a knee to the former president the way that his appointee in Florida is. The fact that the attorneys are making claims in the public, which they can't back up with evidence in court, is not going to sit well with him and does not bode well for Donald Trump's efforts to stall the Justice Department in their investigation of his having taken classified documents from the White House. The second big development involves the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who has been investigating Donald Trump for a number of years now. You may recall that she's the Attorney General who filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump over Trump University, settling with him for some unspecified amount of money and for shutting down the university. Well, now James has filed another lawsuit, this one the result of her multi-year investigation. And the 220-page complaint, which of course I'll link to down below, includes detailed descriptions and numbers showing the kind of wholesale frauds that Donald Trump engaged in. Essentially what the claim boils down to, though, is that Donald Trump basically changed the valuation of his properties when it suited him. So like, for example, when the taxing entities came by and wanted to know how much tax they should levy on his properties, he claimed that the properties weren't worth a lot of money. On the other hand, when he went to the banks and tried to borrow money, he claims that the properties were worth a whole lot more than anybody believed that they were, including various appraisers. In fact, it's documented that at one point, Deutsche Bank, one of his big lenders, required him to get an appraisal, and despite what the appraisers said, he more than doubled the amount that he was claiming in terms of the valuation. And his accountant, who has since withdrawn from working with him, apparently said that if they had known about the appraisal, they would not have supported him making the claims in his financial statements. Now, you know that Donald Trump is going to claim, in fact, he's already claiming that this is some kind of witch hunt and that there's no basis for these claims, that they're all politically motivated, blah, 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 blah. And for sure, Letitia James is a Democrat who's probably targeted Donald Trump, at least in part because she doesn't like him politically, nor do her constituents, by the way. But that being said, at a certain point, facts are facts. And she certainly got facts to back up her claims, unlike Donald Trump in front of the special master. And those facts are detailed point by point in the complaint. As I always describe to my students, essentially to prove fraud, you need to prove 5 things. 1, that you said something that was untrue. Number 2, that you knew was untrue at the time you said it. Number 3, that the person relied upon that untruth statement. Number 4, that the person was harmed as a result of that untrue statement. And number 5, that the statements were material. And the way I describe that to my students are that they matter, that they weren't some kind of random statement, but that they were something specific. And typically, in fraud cases, the hardest thing to claim is that you intended to make the untruthful statement, that you knew it was untrue at the time you made it, and you made it anyway. Because it requires you to kind of get into the mind of the person who's the defendant. Well, in this case, we have evidence where he's claiming one valuation to one person and another valuation to another person, which seems to point pretty clearly that he knew what he was doing it on purpose. In this case, actually, the bigger issue might be whether the parties were harmed as a result of this. In particular, the banks. Donald Trump will point to the fact that he has not defaulted on these loans and that he's current in all his payments. That ignores the fact that he's filed bankruptcy multiple times, using the court essentially to restructure his debt obligations, and also that the banks gave him probably a better interest rate and lower payments than he would have had if the valuations were accurate. In fact, according to James's complaint, the high valuations cost the banks as much as $250 million in lost profits. Now, you might not feel bad for the banks, because certainly they made out fine anyway, but this comes down to the question of, do we have the same justice system for everybody, the rich and poor alike? And I can guarantee you that if you or I lied on a loan application for, say, a mortgage for a house about the value of the assets that we owned, we would face serious consequences. And if Donald Trump doesn't, then it'll go to show that we do not have a legal system that treats the rich and powerful the same way it treats everybody else. Well, if you want to see another video where I talk about one legal action that's causing Donald Trump some serious problems, check out this one over here. The Georgia prosecutor is going after him big time, and she just indicated last week, by the way, that she expects that some people could be facing jail time as a result of the grand jury investigation she's been engaging in. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.